Is this a manly character? Dandadan's Okarun isn't the cool movie star he's compared to, but he's actually someone better. Okarun doesn't look like the muscular hero Goku or the macho teenager Jotaro, but he is still cool in his own way and is clearly not meant to look like these other characters. Which gives us a surprisingly difficult question. Is Okarun meant to be a rejection of traditional masculinity, or is he really a validation of it shown in a new way? That's why in this video, I'm gonna compare Okarun to typical shonen protagonists, analyze some of his cooler moments, and explain why he's a perfect example of modern masculinity. Just be warned that there may be some spoilers. Now, of course, the only way we can talk about masculinity is by starting with Dandadan's manliest character, Ken Takakura. The whole idea of masculinity is introduced when Momo explains how she wants a boyfriend like her movie star idol, causing her to look for him in all the wrong places. This is followed by her falling for a scrawny crybaby nerd who just so happens to be named Ken Takakura, heavily implying that this is the boyfriend of her dreams. And you can interpret this to be a rejection of traditional masculinity. Momo wants a cool tough guy, but what she falls for is a skinny nerd who listens to her and is vulnerable. At the same time, Momo calls Okarun manly, and he even tries to get in shape just like every other gym bro. So you can see where the confusion comes from. But this is why we have to go back to how Momo describes her idol. She sees Ken Takakura, the symbol of masculinity, as tough and hard-boiled. Not necessarily buff or strong, just tough and hard-boiled. Now, we all know what tough means, something that doesn't break easily, but hard-boiled isn't as obvious. You hear it all the time in anime, but what does it really mean? Google will tell you it also means tough as well as cynical. Now, maybe this is true for Ken Takakura, but is this true for Okarun? Technically, you could say this whenever he's in Turbo Granny form because he's all depressed, but obviously that's not exactly what we're talking about. In fact, we're shown that Momo doesn't like Okarun in this form or the way he talks in this form, implying that this isn't what she likes about Ken Takakura. So cynical isn't exactly what we're looking for. You could also say hard-boiled means callous. In other words, someone who's manly because they've lived a tough life and now they're tough towards other people. But that's a bit too cruel for our crybaby hero. If anything, Okarun is the opposite of callous because he goes out of his way to be nice to everyone. A better term would be something like tempered, almost like an iron ingot that is melted and forged over a long time before it becomes a badass sword. And this is our first definition of modern masculinity. Not someone who's necessarily tough or cynical, but someone with the ability to endure hard times. Because Okarun isn't tough looking like Goku. He doesn't have six-pack abs or giant muscles. He also isn't a red pill alpha like Jotaro telling women to piss off and constantly dropping one-liners like a cowboy. But he sets himself apart with his capacity to be tough. The moment he wins over Momo is when he explains that he's willing to protect Momo even if he has to be a monster. This is when Momo tells him to show everyone what a man he is. What Momo is initially drawn to isn't Okarun's muscles or his alpha attitude, but his resilience and his capacity to be tough. So clearly the first element of this modern masculinity is being tempered, having this capacity to be strong rather than actually looking strong. But to that point, you might argue that manly characters still need to look like men. There's plenty of strong characters like Deku or Naruto that you don't really think of as manly because they don't look like grown men. People think of Goku as manly even though he can be a man-child, not just because he's an adult, but because he looks like someone who is fully matured and strong. This even applies to Jotaro. People laugh about the whole "this is a teenager in anime" meme, but the reason artists do this is so characters like Jotaro look strong. Jotaro never takes off his jacket, but he still looks strong like Goku because of his intimidating height and broad shoulders. But then you look at a character like Okarun, who looks like he's 90 pounds soaking wet, and he only looks like a boy. So how do you write a masculine character that traditionally looks like a man, but really looks like a teenager? Well, that's the thing. The reason characters like Goku and Jotaro are masculine isn't just because they're big. being big is really about communicating reliability. Goku and Jotaro being big conveys this idea that they're strong, and so they can be relied on in a fight. But the thing about Okarune is that Momo knows she can rely on him even if he isn't the toughest guy. He already proved this when they first met. He does it every other time they team up to fight some crazy monster. And even after they get into a fight, when she thinks Okarune is fooling around with another girl, this reliability is only affirmed when Okarune admits he's been working out during his lunches. Momo teases him, but Okarune explains that on top of conditioning to fight all these crazy monsters, he's also working out so that he could get in shape without Momo noticing and make her think he was cool. So after feeling betrayed, but soon realizing Okarune was spending his free time just to try and impress her, Momo understands just how much Okarune cares about her. And this is another element of modern masculinity, the idea that you don't have to look tough or strong, but you do need to put in the same kind of effort that makes tough-looking dudes. Whether that effort is spent at the gym or doing small things when people aren't looking to make them feel safe and appreciated. Although there is a strong argument to be made that just because you're nice doesn't make you manly. A lot of nice guys don't come off as manly. A lot of times putting in too much effort can appear desperate or creepy. But this is actually what makes Okarune truly masculine. The fact that he can endure adversity and puts in the effort to be reliable both come together to make up his most masculine quality, his disinterest in what other people think about him and his growing self-confidence. The best example of what this looks like is when Okarune and Momo are looking for Vamola's golden ball. Okarune makes a comment about how everyone in his class is finally paying attention to him after years of feeling invisible. In response, Momo explains this is because all of them are noticing how cool Okarune has become. This makes Okarune say, "Yippee," which is obviously the manliest response to finding out your crush thinks you're cool. But when Okarune feels embarrassed and asks what he should have said, Momo points out the best thing about Okarune and says what he did fits him. And this is the third and most important quality of Okarune's modern masculinity. He struggles against obstacles. He puts in the effort to be the person he wants to be. In the process, he actually becomes that person without even realizing. Naturally, he appears cooler to characters like Hinta, who see that whatever he's doing makes him popular. And while he doesn't see it, Momo sees how cool Okarune is as he sacrifices himself for her. In this way, Okarune is unlike any other shonen protagonist. He's kind of like Ichigo, a character that tries to look cool as someone like Jotaro, but the very fact that he tries to look cool and is aware of his reputation often makes him look sillier than he wants to be. Meanwhile, Okarune also wants to look cool, but he has the modesty to realize that he isn't a Jotaro or a Goku or a Ken Takakura, even though he literally is Ken Takakura. Okarune is less concerned with the reputation of being cool and more concerned with the feeling of being cool, especially when he's with Momo, and he understands that this is something he can only get by putting in the work to earn that feeling. In this sense, Okarune is actually the perfect take on a modern Ken Takakura, because Ken Takakura is naturally what you think of when you think of someone who's manly. He's tough, he's a badass, he's an older dude who looks like he's seen a thing or two. But what is his famous catchphrase that Momo falls in love with? "I'm an awkward fellow." The thing that's so cool about Ken Takakura is that he has all of the qualities of a red pill, Clint Eastwood, cowboy-looking man, but he has the maturity to understand that none of these things really make him cool, because being cool isn't just about appearances. It's about the confidence to be the best version of who you can be, which is the irony of Ken Takakura. Saying "I'm an awkward fellow" shows that he sees himself as weird, but it's cool because it demonstrates that he knows exactly who he is. And this is exactly what makes Okarune cool. Not just that he tries to get in shape, not just that he's reliable, but the fact that he understands that he isn't the cool guy he's trying to become. And even when he does the right things to become that guy, he has the maturity to know that doesn't magically make him some aura farming final boss. But the irony is that this self-awareness and acceptance of himself is what finally makes Okarune cool and helps him win over Momo. Which is why Okarune isn't really a rejection of traditional masculinity. He can come off as a softie or a crybaby, but the truth is that Okarune is just like Ken Takakura. On top of his capacity to be strong and his desire to be reliable, what defines Okarune's unique masculinity is his balance of self-awareness and self-confidence. He communicates his strength and maturity more than his appearance or abilities ever could. And that is the appeal of Okarune's modern masculinity.